but the statistics that you showed earlier were for all students in the class.
Yeah, that was for all students in the class. Okay, so then what I'm going to show you is the pretest and post-test results by question on the tutorial. So there's 22 questions that showed up both as a pre and post-test question. And that's too much to show on one graph. So here's half of them. So this here is one question that was asked as a pretest, that's the pink, and the post-test, that's the purple. And this is the percent that students got correct on that. And then these are just individual questions. I wasn't quite sure how to label them because
Are these different questions on the same pretest or different questions chosen
All throughout the semester?
All throughout the semester. So these first two are from the first tutorial. These second two are from, these first two are from the second tutorial. I didn't like any of the first tutorial questions that much.
So this is a sampling, but how did you decide to sample?
So I asked, so we wrote the pretest questions, and then I asked these post-test questions, usually the questions that students did worst on the students did the most, students did poorly on the pretest.
Okay.
So if they did really well on the pretest, I usually didn't ask again in the post-test question. So that's how I decided which ones to re-ask in the post-test. So what you can see is they're pretty similar. Particularly, I don't know if you can see the error bars, but almost always the error bars are overlapping between pre and post-test. Usually pretty significantly. There are of the 22 questions, I think I did a t-test and maybe four or five of them where there was significant improvement between the pre and post-test, but mostly it's not too much.
Just a rough order, is it like 15 students that are in the set or 20 students in the set?
So it varies because it varies by question because whether how many students asked it, but it's around like 10 to 15 students, so it's not like a huge number. Yeah, I mean, and it's going to hopefully we're redoing the pretest again this semester and hopefully also next semester, so there will be more students, but also the questions are being improved, so not all of them will be all comparable. Yeah, and then there's some questions where students are just totally flat, even if you neglect the error bars. So, and what's interesting is it's not just the tutorials that come in between. Unfortunately, it'd be great if we could do the pretest, but usually the pretest happens after it's been covered in lecture. But then it's usually covered more in lecture, between pre and post-test. The homework, if there is homework on this subject, usually comes between the pre and post-test, and also the tutorial comes between the pre and post-test. So there's a lot of stuff in there for there not to be significant improvement, and not just the tutorial. And we can look at the other ones too. This is the second half of the tutorials, 8 through 12, and it's similar. I just wanted, for completeness, thought I could show you all of them. So I think successfully found student difficulties using these. Yeah.
Well, I know it's not significant, but almost big drop there.
This one. Yeah. Okay. So these last ones are something that wasn't covered in class, so I'm not sure if that matters. But yeah, these last ones are the most discouraging because you'll see in a minute people who didn't come to the tutorial actually did better on some of them.
Whoa.
So, but not significantly. It's just a trend, so it's hard to say what it means. Yeah. So I think it's a little discouraging on learning gains from tutorial perspective, but also encouraging to see there's many difficulties to investigate. Also, I haven't validated these pretest questions, so at some point I need to go through and check that students are actually thinking about them the way I think that. Some of them were again asked on midterms, so those ones I have a little bit more written information, and it seems like students were interpreting them mostly the way I was interpreting them. And also it's interesting because the ones it seems like students were taking these pre and post tests fairly seriously because the results from the midterm, when the question was asked again on the midterm, was pretty similar to the post test. And usually, if there was a significant improvement between the pre and post test, there's also significant improvement between the pre and the exam. And if there was no significant improvement, pre-test and post-test, again, there's no significant improvement onto the exam. And so then I want to show you the people who did and did not attend the tutorial. So there's a different, this axis has changed. So now I'm telling you post minus pre. So you want it not to be overlapping 0 if there was an improvement or an improvement, a decrease in performance. And the light purple is people who attended the tutorial, and the pink is those who didn't attend. So this one's the best one. Here, the people who and 0. And the people who didn't attend the tutorial didn't have improvement significantly different from 0. And the error bars don't overlap. So that's good. Oh, I should mention that my error bars maybe aren't quite what traditional error bars are. There's a 95% confidence interval, which is 2 standard errors, not 1 standard error. So they're a little more conservative than some error bars. But then overall, mostly there's no significant difference. And again, sometimes the people who, like these purple ones that didn't attend tutorial bars, sometimes that was only like 4 people who did the pretest and the post-test and then didn't come to the tutorial. So that's why there's really big error bars. It's hard to say what that means. And then here's this. What's interesting is that for the first several tutorials, the people who came had a significantly lower GPA than the people who didn't come. So the people who came to tutorial GPA was like 3.3, and the people who didn't come average was like 3.8. So it's pretty different. So even with the low number, it's statistically different. So it's kind of intriguing that particularly in this one, the people who attended the tutorial did a lot better, and in general that they're the same, given that the people
So the tutorial, the voluntary tutorial, is drawing the academically weaker students.
They're not weaker than the course average, but they're weaker than people who choose to take the pretest but don't come to the pretest and post-test, but don't come to the tutorial. So they're close to the course average.
What percentage is taking the pretest in this sample?
What do you mean? What percent?
Like how many people? You said it's optional, but what percentage of the class about is taking?
About a third.
Third.
And similarly, like around a third are coming to the tutorial. And usually it overlaps pretty significantly.
We should do this in quantum mechanics, in part because this semester the instructor is requiring all students to do the pre-test. He's just not requiring the tutorial.
Only getting about 2/3 taking it.
Even so, you're going to get a lot better fraction of the class.
Yeah.
All right, and we can look at the second set. Again, it's the people who didn't intend to write. And these ones were, this was material covered in I think these last 3 maybe, could be the last 4. Or it was material covered only in the tutorial, it wasn't covered in lecture. So it's kind of interesting, like the people, the tutorial, yeah, particularly on some of them, it seems like the tutorial didn't help people. But it's hard to say when the error bars are all crossing. The error bars are really big.
So what was like the nature of the questions? How, again, maybe I'm stuck on that goal thing,
Right.
What the tutorial's teaching versus what's being assessed here. If the questions are like the ones we just saw, it's a different assessment than what was being taught. So the core students who took the tutorial were just trying to use the thing. That's all they knew how to do, is use the thing.
I'm not sure.
Use Gauss.
Use Gauss as well. Yeah, I mean the tutorials are meant, like they have some questions about why can't you or can't you do this in this situation. Like they're not like your average homework question.
Yeah, I know. Imagine. Yeah.
But and then the pre-test and post-test are a little more like typical question, typical physics question.
We should have done better.
Yeah. So what do these results mean? I'm not sure. Maybe upper level content is just hard to learn. I mean, because some of those questions they had, course instruction, homework, and tutorial in between the pre and the post. Perhaps our tutorials need some improvement.